breaking down Red Raider baseball like only we can. This is the Talkin Baseball podcast from Double T 97.3 and DoubleTSportsNetwork.com.
Welcome into another episode of Talkin Baseball alongside Jamie Lent. I'm Chois Woodman. Appreciate you joining us here with the Double T Sports Network as we creep closer to baseball season for the Red Raiders. It is getting closer because we're seeing all sorts of things come out. This podcast, as usual, brought to you by our friends at Andrews Brothers. And Jamie Lent, I'm Chois Woodman. Jamie, this is we're seeing all these preseason polls come out. And it's weird for me as a Red Raider baseball fan because, well, I'm used to seeing Texas Tech in the preseason polls, and they're not there. I'm not saying they should be there or deserve to be there, though there are plenty of teams that are getting ranked that finished the season not ranked last year, or some that missed the tournament last year. But it's just kind of strange as a Tech baseball fan and where our expectations have elevated to. It's like, what's going on? Preseason rankings without the Red Raiders, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're talking about a team that after they've made these runs to Omaha, they're always getting the benefit of the doubt, as all teams are, right? Because you just expect that they're going to reload and be good again next year. Now you're coming off a 3-year stretch where you've made it to a regional 2 times, lost in the regional final both times, and then this past year you didn't make the postseason. So it's 3 straight years that you didn't make it to a super. Yeah. So obviously it's understandable when you say the program right now has not hit the expectations that you set a few years before that, right? For the years before that.
Right.
So is it a little bit down or is it a little bit different year? I don't know that it's fair to say that you're down at this point. The games will decide that, right? We'll see what happens.
That's the good thing about sports.
Yeah, but you see that you were a team that didn't make the postseason last year, and so you understand why the national pundits or whatever are not giving you the benefit of the doubt in that regard. That being said, I think 2 of the polls are out. You didn't make those top 25 perfect games. However, they put out their next 15 or whatever, and you were slotted in at like number 33. So clearly you're not too far out there, and obviously people have a lot of respect for what Tim Tadlock has done and know that he's able to recruit him and Coach Thomas and the rest of the staff, and so they expect to bounce back. I think many people feel that way. At the same time, I don't know that I have any kind of issues with the fact that you're not ranked inside the top 25.
Sure. And D1 baseball only has 3 Big 12 teams. We've seen that as a trend the last few years because the SEC has just kind of taken over along with some of the ACC.
They're spending a lot more money on their baseball programs than you are in the Big 12. That's the plain and simple, and that's why you've seen them dominate in Omaha and have such success. So it's not like it's not any different than any other sport. The teams that are spending the most amount of money and the conferences that are spending the most amount of money and have the money to spend, you're going to see them have more success more times than not.
No doubt. So with that, Red Raiders not in the polls, but one way you can get in the polls quickly is if you've hit on some of these portal additions. We've talked a lot about portal additions. We've talked a lot about some of these guys when we're talking position groups. But for those that are just kind of gearing up for baseball season, who are going to be the key cogs, the key transfers that are going to make the biggest impact for Tech?
Yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic with this team choice. Go back to the 2020 season. And you only had 23% of the guys on your roster that had played somewhere else before they played for Texas Tech.
Right.
You go to 2025, that number is 44%, nearly double the amount of guys. And this upcoming season, starting the year, you will have 12 junior college players coming to Texas Tech. You will have 8 Division I transfers. And you've had, actually, shockingly enough, you've had more Division I transfers. You had 9 2 seasons ago than the 8. But for the most part, you haven't been transfer portal heavy. And this year, I think the Red Raiders went a little bit heavier, not just with the transfer portal, but the junior college ranks. So when you look back at last season and you would constantly see these teams that the Red Raiders were playing. Kansas was the great example. I felt like with a new coach, they went out and got so many veteran arms.
Yeah.
And whether they had come in from junior college or other 4-year schools, every pitcher they were throwing out there was a junior or a senior who had pitched in college, for 60 and 80 innings or whatever. 100 innings. And meanwhile, you have other teams that weren't using the portal as much, like the Red Raiders, that are sending freshmen and sophomores out there that are trying to develop guys. And so you clearly saw that there's a change in college baseball, just like we've seen in other sports, right? Yep. Where every team hits the transfer portal really hard. No school has done it more maybe this football season than the Red Raiders, right? So you're doing a little bit more of that in baseball. I think in baseball you're still going to see more of the developing of players a little bit more maybe than other sports, especially more than basketball. But you got to hit the portal, and you got to get older, and got to have veteran players, and the Red Raiders have done that.
And one thing you mentioned there is that you went junior college heavy compared to what you've done in recent years, and part of that is because of Tim Tadlock's past. He was a junior college national champion coach, and there's still tons of roots there and connections. But the weird thing about it is when they did this, they didn't know that some of these guys you're going to be able to get for an extra year if you want them. Like
yes.
Saviteri is a JUCO guy, right?
Yes,
so he's one that may make an impact, and you don't have to keep them for the extra year, or you may.
Hopefully, they're so good that they're draft eligible and they're rated highly and they're gone to the draft anyway.
But now that's another element that goes with it.
So let's talk a little bit about these 8 guys that you brought in that are guys that are coming from Division I schools, and we'll start on the offensive side of things because I think all of these guys are big impact guys. Yeah. Okay, we'll start on the offensive side of things. I think Logan Hughes, he's a transfer from Stetson. I think he can play. I mean, he'll be in the mix of first base and in the outfield. But Hughes last year 8 home runs as a freshman, so he's got a couple of years to play for the Red Raiders. A left-handed bat. I think is a guy that you're going to see in the lineup almost every single day. Plays with a lot of energy and all that good stuff as well. So I think Hughes was a really good get for the Red Raiders, who should blossom into a big-time hitter. Peyton Schulze is a corner infielder. He comes from Cal, hit over 300, 323 last year, 10 homers, almost 60 driven in, playing in the Pac-12. Tons of experience with this guy. He's a 4-year guy. A guy, like I said, can play either first or third base really, really well. A guy that it feels like when you watched him in the fall and you saw him out there on the field, he was a guy that was constantly encouraging pitchers and talking to the other infielders. So it feels like a good leadership guy, a culture guy. And again, a guy that has got good power and all that, so it feels like he's going to be able to come in and make a big impact right off the bat for the Red Raiders. One of the guys he's going to be battling with over there at first base is Robin Villanueva. Villanueva comes from Tennessee, played on the national championship team a year ago. He played junior college a couple seasons at Weatherford, where he was a JUCO All-American, led the country in homers, RBI. I mean, was just a monster. Dude's got crazy power. Only played in 35 games for Tennessee last year. Obviously, they were loaded. But in those 35 games, homered 5 times and drove in 22. He's got a chance to be a big-time run producer for you. I've talked about how good he is defensively at first base as well. Yeah. So that's going to be a really good battle with him and Schulze there at first base. Schulze, as I mentioned, also can play third base. TJ Pompey, it looks like, is going to be playing there as well. So there's a lot of competition within the infield of veteran, really good players in the mix there. So some other guys to mention. Let's go to the pitching side of things. Lucas Perko, sophomore right-hander. Again, a guy who's got a couple years. Last season, in 72 innings of work, had 76 strikeouts. So a guy that you feel like is only going to get better, but good stuff there. 3.38 ERA. Another young arm that, whether he's a starter, he's coming out of the bullpen, midweek, whatever, you have just it feels like you have so many more quality options this year on the mound than you had a season ago. Another transfer is Zach Crotchfeld. He's a left-handed pitcher from Auburn. Didn't have a great sophomore season last year at Auburn. He's initially from Jersey, but a guy that coming out of high school in New Jersey was ranked near the top 50 in the country of players coming out of high school. So big-time upside for this guy. Had a good freshman year for Auburn, but a little bit of a down year last year. Hit the portal, and the Red Raiders feel really good about him. I think he's got enough talent to be a weekend starter. We'll see where they decide to use him. 2 guys you got from USF. Two right-handers, sophomore Logan Beavis. Beavis looks like a guy that probably is a bullpen arm for the Red Raiders, but a sophomore last year that won a couple of games and had an ERA under 5. Looks like a guy that you'll have for a couple of years and be able to use him in different ways. And then Jack Siebert, a senior right-hander. He's been the Saturday starter for the Bulls the last 2 seasons. So lots of experience there. He's pitched in plenty of big games. 61 strikeouts to only 19 walks. Shows he's got good command. Another veteran presence out there who shouldn't be bothered, by the big moments. And so I think that's another guy that has a great chance to be a weekend starter. I think I'll be really surprised if he's not one of your weekend starters.
Could do that, or could be in that long relief role where you see him 2 times that weekend.
Absolutely. And then the final pitcher in the transfer portal class is Steven Sepulveda. Sepulveda comes from Baylor. Didn't get a lot of innings last year, just 18 his freshman year, but he's kind of got the arm slot that's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. He feels like a 1-inning bullpen guy when you're going to throw something different at a team, but he could provide you something as well. So that's 8 guys that I think the Red Raiders feel like, if you're bringing guys in from the transfer portal, you're expecting them to make an impact right away. And I think, at different levels with each of these guys, but
sure.
I think that all of those guys could be in the mix to be important players for this team.
So, a lot of transfer portal options. You mentioned some outfielders there. We went over infield position battles last time we talked here on Talkin Baseball. We'll talk some outfield options for Texas Tech, but first a word from Andrus Brothers.
When you want the brand in West Texas roofing, there's only one company to call, Andrus Brothers Roofing. Like our Red Raiders, Andrus Brothers knows that to win, you have to be better than your competition and you have to dominate in all phases. With over 40 years experience, Andrus Brothers has mastered these concepts. So when the high winds and debris damage your roof, there's only one company to call, Andrus Brothers Roofing. Accept no substitutes. Stick with the starters on the ABR winning team. Andrus Brothers Roofing, we nail it every time.
So, Jamie, the Red Raider outfield, there's a lot of position battles within the infield. Some of those guys in the infield are also battling positions in the outfield. So there's a lot of dynamics working in the spring here that they've got a lot to figure out in just a little time.
Yeah, no question. And I think, Coach Tadlock always likes to have versatile guys sure. that can play different positions. It gives you lots of different options. And I think that you have that with this year's squad. You really have 7 outfielders in the mix. Kyler Thompson is a JC transfer guy. Kendall Johnson comes in. He's a freshman. Jay Souza is a freshman that we didn't get to see in the fall because he was injured. He was the highest rated player in your draft class. Logan Hughes, we talked about him coming from Stetson. Damian Bravo, of course, last year played left field for or center field for the Red Raiders. Ryan Jones is a freshman from Aledo, can play a little corner infield, and I feel like everybody's sleeping on Ryan Jones. I think he's got a big upside, left-handed hitter with lots of pop. He was injured for part of the fall, so maybe people didn't know about him as much, but I think he looks the part of a college baseball hitter. And Will Maggots is a guy that redshirted for you a season ago that showed some good stuff too, but he battled injuries in the fall as well. So the interesting part here is that, to me, we talked about Hughes earlier being in the mix at first base as well. I'm guessing that he ends up playing more outfield than first base because of the quality that you have there at first base with those other 2 guys. And with his left-handed power, he hits righties and lefties both well. I would imagine Hughes is going to be a starter somewhere. First base, DH, outfield, for you all season long. And so I would imagine a lot of those days are in the outfield. He's solid out there, not spectacular, but solid. Damian Bravo's played a ton of second base, and some believe he'll be your starting second baseman. He started there in the fall opposite Antonelli Salvatore. And the big question there, Salvatore was one of your best hitters in the fall.
Especially in the Red-Black series.
Yeah, and so you want to keep him on the field, then you got to put Damian Bravo somewhere else.
Right.
Damian Bravo hit 378 last year. So if that's the case, it's kind of interesting that the outfield can depend on how hitters in the infield are doing, but that's absolutely the case. And if Salvatore is swinging it well, then Bravo's going to be back in left field or center field.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's a corner outfield position. But that factors in as well. But then you have these three guys, these three newcomers. And Kendall Johnson, I mean, can flat out go get it, right?
Yeah.
In center field. He's a freshman from Little Elm, left-handed hitter, but great anticipation, great speed in the outfield. Really impressive. Made numerous diving catches in the fall. Just a really impressive runner. Kyler Thompson is a junior. He's a junior college transfer from Galveston College. And Thompson, also great speed. One of your best hitters in the fall as well. Stronger arm probably than Johnson to play center field. Okay, and so he looks like he can absolutely, whether it's a corner outfield position or center field, he can, I mean, cover a ton of ground out there. And then there's the big question mark over Jay Souza, right? I mean, he's a guy that many thought would be taken on the second day of the draft.
Yep.
Last year, he wasn't, I mean, made it clear that he wants to be a Red Raider, and he's a Red Raider, but we didn't get to see him at all in the fall because of a leg injury. And, you know, everything that I've heard is that he's ready to go. And this is an uber talented young man, okay? Right. And so, and he's a center fielder. And so we're certain that with the three guys I just talked about, at any point, if you want to get really defensive, man, you can put those three guys out there.
And there were times last year where you needed to get defensive and you couldn't.
And so you can do that. But if you want to get more offensive, okay, well then you're moving Bravo to the outfield. You're putting Salvatore at second, or Hughes is in the infield. I mean, all those different options that you have. So, I mean, Coach Tadlock is going to be able to match up lefty-righty at times. But, you know, he wants some power out of those corner outfield positions, and he wants really good defense from the center field spot. And so I think you have plenty of options to do those kind of things with this group.
So, depending when you're listening to this, watching this, we're roughly a month out from baseball season. Stay tuned in to our Talkin Baseball episodes over the coming weeks. We'll go over pitching staff in the next few weeks, season expectations. We'll dive into Jamie's projected starting 9 before too long. So we'll go through it all. But appreciate you tuning in. Thanks to Andrews Brothers for sponsoring the podcast as well. For Jamie Lent, I'm Chois Woodman. It's been Talkin Baseball, part of the Double T Sports Network.
Boom shakalaka.
Easy peasy.
Breaking down Red Raider baseball like only we can. This is the Talkin Baseball podcast from Double T 97.3 and DoubleTSportsNetwork.com.